part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
And welcome to another Red Guy and Rhoda podcast powered by MGM Northfield Park. And we've got to give a major shout out to Northfield Park, title sponsor once again of the R&R podcast. Northfield Park is your home for live and simulcast racing. Catch the excitement of live harness racing every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday evening with a 6 p.m. post time. Wager and win on daily top thoroughbred and harness tracks from around the world with action starting around noon. Plus, enter to play the free handicapping contest every Sunday for a chance to win cash, cold hard cash, top prize $500. Registration begins at 11 a.m. Free admission, free parking every day at Northfield Park. Shout out also to our outstanding producer, Jordan Powell. Make sure everything sounds fabulous for all of you out there listening in the podcatosphere. And Michael Regai on vacation once again. So pinch hitting for Michael to talk about the major deal that the Cleveland Cavaliers made in the recent week or weeks, however long it's been, is Sam Amico. And you can catch him right here on the Press Play Podcast Network with Cavs on the Break, that podcast, one of the top NBA podcasts around the country. You can also follow him on Twitter at Amico Hoops. He's the senior NBA writer at HoopsWire and a friend of the show. How are you, Sam?
I'm doing well. It's nice to be on the network with someone other than Chase Smith. No, I'm just kidding. But it's you know, this is the NBA, right? And there is no off season anymore. So here we are.
Yeah, and it's the middle of, well, not the middle, but a couple of weeks into college football, right? First week of the NFL, pennant races in the Major League Baseball, American League, and National League. And the Cavaliers stole all the headlines recently, Sam, as they made a major move. You guys had to do an emergency Cavs on the Break podcast when it was announced that Cleveland had acquired Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz for Colin Sexton, Ochai Agbaji, Lauri Markkanen, 3 first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps. Sounds like an awful lot to give up for an all-star, Sam, but the grades I'm seeing on this trade are very favorable for the Cavs. What are you hearing?
You know, but yeah, and obviously I've read what other people have read. I read ESPN's kind of take on this, where they had all the insiders kind of weigh in on it. They were favorable. I talked to a couple of opposing GMs who thought it was great for the Cavs. You know, when you factor in everything with Colin Sexton's contract situation, not being overly sticky, but potentially concerning. You throw that in there and you are getting an all-star. You feel like you're getting an upgrade and a young player that, you know, fits into your core. This is what you're assuming, that all this fits, and you are extremely promising. Now, you had promise before all this. That's what made this trade so shocking, is that everybody felt like the Cavs already had a rosy future. Well, now, you know, for whatever reason, Kobe Altman thought, you know what, let's go out and get a bona fide all-star that's a 3-time all-star. Let's go out and get him, as long as we don't have to give up our other stars, which are Darius Garland, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley. And now we'll get 4 of them. And in this league, we saw last year what can happen with injuries. You know, and anymore, you can't have enough stars because you win in the NBA with stars. And if, you know, guys go down or get hurt, then all of a sudden, Kenny, you know, you're shorthanded. And we saw that last year with the Cavaliers. You know, we're 4th or 5th in the Eastern Conference most of the year. And then all of a sudden the injuries took their toll. So, you know, I think that people look at this favorably. Did the Cavs give up a lot? Yeah, I think more or less picks. But if you're worried about those picks, then this whole thing didn't work out, because those draft picks should be in the 20s, you know, early mid 20s. When they come available, because the Cavs are supposed to be good for a long time. So I think, Kenny, that, you know, that it's being looked at as very favorable. It might take some time for all this to mesh and work out. But other than that, I think, you know, most people that I have seen or read or talked to are giving it at worst a B+. A lot of people are giving it an A+.
The way I look at it, Sam, is this: in losing the play-in games to both Brooklyn and Atlanta, they were shown that they lacked a shooting guard, right? That they needed somebody that could create his own shot that wasn't named Darius Garland, who tried to take on, the whole team offensively on his shoulders by himself. And he shot, I think, 9 for 27 in that last game and just ran out of gas. So they needed somebody out there with some athleticism that could take it off the bounce, create, finish at the rim, and also knock it down from long range. I mean, this guy scored 50 points twice in a playoff game, right? Averaged 36 points, I think, during the one playoff stretch. And he's only, I think, 26 years old? He turns 26 this week, and you've got him for 3 more years under contract, and there's a 4th-year player option. So when you look at what he brings to the table, 3-time All-Star, his youth, his athleticism, the position that he plays, it's a 6'1" backcourt, starting 2 guys at the same height. But you make up for that when you have a 6'10" and a 6'11" guy in the front court. And if you start Karis LeVert, who I think they should start, and move Isaac Okoro to the bench, you also make up for that defense on the wing with a 6'6" Karis LeVert. So I wasn't doing cartwheels and somersaults and jumping for joy with the trade. Bradley Beal would have made me do that. But I like that they were aggressive. They didn't stand pat. They saw a position of need that they wanted to fill because of what happened in the 2 play-in games. They didn't make the playoffs. And I give Kobe Altman and the organization credit for taking a chance on somebody that was available, going out, giving up Sexton, who wasn't going to be part of this future after this year, right? You just drafted Abaji, and Lauri Markkanen's value is never going to be higher, so take advantage of that. I don't think he'll play better than he did last year for the Cavs. And the first-round picks, as you pointed out, I think you get rid of them because you're hoping you're picking 25, 26, 27, 28 in the draft during those years. So thinking, as time has passed since the trade, I like it more today than I did originally, Sam.
Yeah, and with the picks, I think at some point you have to say we're going to stop playing lottery when we don't have LeBron on the team. Right. And they liked getting and drafting Abaji. They got the number 14 pick and getting Abaji. But the bottom line is they didn't want that pick to begin with. They wanted to be in the playoffs and have that pick go to Indiana. So I don't look at that as a big deal. Trading him they are, Kenny, right now, they still need some shooting. They're going to need they're in the market for either a veteran shooter, preferably an older guy who's on the free agent market that'll come for the vet minimum that can play just, 10, 12 minutes a game and come out and spread the floor a little bit. And I know that they're looking for that. So I was with you, Kenny. You said it exactly right. I wasn't doing cartwheels or anything, but I just thought, hey, look, this is a nice deal for the Cavs in that, yes, of course, he's 6'1", like you said, but he plays so much bigger than that because of his athleticism. And I just think they got a definite upgrade. Like you said, Markkanen probably has hit his ceiling, and he did some nice things for the Cavs. I think that sometimes you might miss those triple towers that they ran out, but they just have so much more firepower now, and you make that trade every day of the week when you're getting an all-star in return, and a guy, like you said, who's capable of erupting for 50 points. And you look at it, Kenny, they had Darius Garland. We know what he can do in terms of scoring. They have Donovan Mitchell. We know what he can do, averaging 26 a game. People forget Karis LeVert didn't have a full training camp with the Cavs. He came in, played a game or two. Then there was the All-Star break, and then he hurt his ankle over the All-Star break. He was just out of sorts. But this is a guy who scored 42 points in his final game with the Pacers last season and had 40 in a game before that. So, and then Mobley, you figure, is going to take the next natural step. You've got 4 guys in the lineup that can get you 30 points on any given night. And the nice thing, Kenny, was they were so improved defensively last year with, just some of the schemes and everything. Just they just played so much harder and smarter defensively last year. And, sky's the limit when it comes to the future of this franchise.
One of the things, Sam Amico, that I did after initially reacting the way I did with, hey, I like it. I'm not, overly thrilled with it. I you know what? Let me go back and do some more research, right? Let me go find out a little bit more about him. And one of the things I always look for is this. I look for a guy that when the playoffs roll around, Sam, his regular season career numbers and his playoff numbers, I look for, do they go up or down in the playoffs? Meaning, can they handle the pressure or not handle the pressure? Does the pressure get to them when it matters most in the playoffs? This guy's played in 39 playoff games, Sam, okay? And I looked it up. Donovan Mitchell's career scoring average in the regular season, 24 points a game. In the postseason, 28 points a game. So up 4 points in the postseason. Rebounds and assists are about the same. Shooting percentage about the same. So to me, a guy that can, have similar numbers in the shooting categories, assist, rebound, but his scoring numbers go up when it matters most when points are at a premium. I love seeing that out of him. And like I said, he had 57 in one playoff game, 51 in another. In 2 separate seasons, Sam, he averaged over 30 points a game in the playoffs. And that's an area where this team lacks the experience, with the exception of who? Kevin Love, really, right? Jared Allen, maybe when he was with the Nets, I think played in a few playoff games. But Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, those guys haven't. So this is a guy now that can answer I guess the superstar caliber players that other teams put out there in the playoffs, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and players of that ilk, that if you need a bucket, you can go to him because he's been there before and he can score the basketball. So like I said, the more research I've done on this, the better I feel about this trade.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, this is all about the playoffs, right? I mean, what you can do in the postseason, you want to position yourself and play well enough and prepare yourself for the postseason during the regular season. But it's really, when you get there to the playoffs, you want to be able to take it to another level. And like you said, he's a guy who can help you do that.
He answers Trae Young, I think, in that play-in game last year, right? You have him, and
yes.
Garland's not trying to do it all by himself. He can be that answer to a Trae Young, right? A DeMar DeRozan in the Bulls and some of the other players that I mentioned. And how about this? Things I didn't know about Donovan Mitchell. Tell me if you knew this, Sam. I totally don't know why. Maybe because I think the slam dunk contest in recent years has been born. Did you know he's a slam dunk champion from 2018? I didn't know that about Donovan Mitchell.
I did not know that until I think I watched some highlights and saw that he did something to honor Vince Carter and threw down a dunk like Vince Carter in that competition. So I only learned it afterwards. Yep.
I didn't know. All rookie team in 2018, rookie of the year, runner up in 2018. And how about this? He has averaged 20 points per game or more in his first 5 seasons. The last guy to do that, do you have any idea who that might be, Sam? Think about it. 5 seasons in a row, first 5 seasons in the league, he's averaged 20 or more points per game. Who was the last guy to do that?
Wasn't LeBron, was it?
No, not LeBron. You ready for this? Allen Iverson. This was according to somewhere on social media with the Cavaliers social media. I saw that. So they're going to pump him up any way they can. And the nickname Spider, I didn't know his nickname was Spider, and how he got it because of his long arms. So while he may only be 6'1", he's in the dunk contest. He's got long arms and athleticism. So Spider, and like I said, 57 points in one game, 51 in another in a playoff game. So I feel much better the more research I did and more film I watched on him. So here's my question to you, Sam Amico. What's the starting lineup for the Cavaliers in your opinion? How should they roll out the starting 5 if everybody is healthy for the first game of the season this year?
Well, I know how I'd do it if I were coach, and I would, the 4 spots are filled, right? You got Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Garland, and Mitchell. I would, and I know some people were thinking, well, put Okoro in there for kind of a glue guy. I would put LeVert in there. I would give yourself as much number 1 firepower as you can. And if Okoro has made a jump, well, then he's going to provide some offense off the bench. for you as you're going to need with LeVert starting. And I do like the fact that he's got a few inches on Okoro too. And there are times LeVert has been a very good defender and a pretty good facilitator at times as well. I think last year when he was trying to get comfortable with the Cavs, he was trying to do too much and looked ball dominant to Cavs fans, but he was not that way in Indiana. He's a pretty good facilitator. He can break people down off the dribble, and he will spend time doing that. But I personally, I would just rather see 4 guys out there who are capable. And Jared Allen, he can score 20 or more sometimes too. But I think in a league that is, so much of it is today's game, so much of it is just outscoring the other guy. I would go with the 4 guys who give you the most firepower there in Garland and Mitchell and LeVert and obviously Mobley. So that would be my preference. I think if you start Okoro, it's because you think that he's developed into a Bruce Bowen type where he's going to consistently knock down the corner threes and he's going to be, a very improved defender. So I just think that you give yourself the best chance of scoring as many points as possible. And you're not losing anything defensively with LeVert. You might even be gaining a little bit if you start him over Okoro.
I'm with you. I think Okoro is perfect for coming off the bench. Your bench bunch, when healthy, it'll be Ricky Rubio at point guard, Jetty Osman, Isaac Okoro, Kevin Love, Robin Lopez, and then you go a little bit further, Lamar Stevens, Dean Wade, Isaiah Mobley, and then you mentioned them looking for a veteran shooter. We'll see if they can add that to that roster, and I think this works out perfectly for the Cavs, moving Okoro to where he belongs on the bench and less pressure. And he can come in. You can go offense, defense late in games if you need to for Mitchell or Garland, whoever it is, and feel good about that. I do want to correct one thing I said earlier, Sam. Last guard to average 20 or more points per game in his first 5 seasons was Allen Iverson joining Donovan Mitchell. LeBron, of course, as a forward, has averaged 20 or more points in his first 5 seasons. So You were correct on that as far as overall players. We always like to be accurate on the Red Guy and Rhoda podcast, even though a lot of times we're not. But if we
not
can
when
catch
you
ourselves,
have me on. You don't need to be.
When we can catch ourselves, we do, and correct it before we put this one in the can. All right, Sam, with the moves that the Cavaliers have made, Eastern Conference, I've been looking at odds, been looking at rankings, been looking at over-under win totals and all of that. Where do you see the Cavaliers with the roster as it stands today in the Eastern Conference pecking order, in your opinion, Sam Amico?
Yeah, I think they're going to be 5th or 6th in the regular season standings because the Eastern Conference is good. And that's not a slight to them. I think it's going to take them a little bit of time to really kind of rise, as high as they're going to this season. And they're, look, they're still a young team with a young core when you compare them to teams like the Miami Heat, the Philadelphia 76ers, who added, PJ Tucker and Harrell, just signed Montrezl Harrell to their already pretty good roster. Those are veteran playoff savvy teams. Obviously Boston went to the finals last year. They got a taste of that. And I haven't even mentioned the Milwaukee Bucks, who I think could be very good. And of course, if they manage to get their act together somehow, some way, and Ben Simmons actually, plays basketball, the Brooklyn Nets could be the team to come out of the East. So, you're talking about those teams, okay? I think I named 5 there. I think the Cavs will be better. They should be better than the Bulls. They should be better than the Raptors. They should be better than any of those other teams. Atlanta's got a pretty good backcourt themselves now with Murray and Trae Young. So, it's not going to be a cakewalk just because they went out and got an all-star guard. They've got their work cut out for them in the Eastern Conference, and all those teams that I named that are below them could, those teams could rise as well. So But I suspect they'll be 5th, 6th, somewhere in that range. And then, potentially get to the second round of the playoffs this year. But, look, we're talking 2, 3, 4 years down the road. This could be the team to beat.
Absolutely. And they just need to get to the playoffs. First of all, they haven't been there,
right.
Without LeBron James on the team since 1998, haven't won a series, I think, since 1992 or 93, whatever it was, without LeBron James on the team in the playoffs. So the odds to make the playoffs right now, betonline.ag as of today, Sam Amico. If you have some money, you would have to wager $280 to win $100 on the Cavs making the playoffs. So Vegas feels like they will make the playoffs. Those are not good odds for you on the Cavaliers making the playoffs. You have to, put down a lot of money to win money. So that's a good sign. Also, Eastern Conference preseason rankings from lineups.com based on lineups today. They have the Cavaliers 6th in the Eastern Conference, and their odds to win the Eastern Conference at plus 2,500. There you put $100 down to win 2,500 on the Cavaliers making it to the NBA Finals. And Sam, win total went from 43.5 for the Cavaliers this year to 46.5 after the Donovan Mitchell trade. Are you taking the over or the under on this? And then we'll let you go. And we appreciate you joining us here on the R&R podcast. Over 46.5 or under 46.5 wins for the Cavs?
I think they'll go over, but it'll be in that range. I think it'll be, maybe get to 50, but I think it'll be 48, 49 right in there. And that's going to be probably good enough for 5th or 6th in the East.
I'm calling 47-35, Sam Amico. So I would be over by a half game. So if I were in Vegas, I'd be putting money down on the over on that one as well. I agree with you. Hey, Sam, thanks for coming in tonight here on the Red Guy and Rhoda podcast, filling in for Michael's on vacation. And for everybody out there who loves Cavalier basketball as well as NBA basketball, I urge you to follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Check out everything that he does as a senior NBA writer at hoopswire.com. And of course, right here on the Press Play Podcast Network, check out his podcast, Cavs on the Break, one of the top NBA podcasts in the country. Sam, always a pleasure to catch up with you. Thanks for making time for us, buddy. We'll talk soon. All right.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me, Kenny. We'll talk to you later.
Sam Amico checking in here on the Red Guy and Rhoda podcast. We'll get a break in right now. And when we come back, it is opening week in the National Football League. And we've got to preview the Browns opener on the road at Carolina against, of course, Baker Mayfield and the Panthers. OIC only in Cleveland. Can that one happen? And we'll have that for you next. Stay with us. Hey, gang, the Roadman, Kenny Rhoda here for MGM Northfield Park. And MGM Northfield Park is your home for live and simulcast racing. Catch the excitement of live harness racing every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday evening with a 6 p.m. post time. Wager and win daily on top thoroughbred and harness tracks from around the world with action starting around noon. Plus, enter to play the free handicapping contest every Sunday for a chance to win some cold hard cash. How about top prize? $500. Registration begins at 11 a.m. every Sunday. Free admission, free parking every day at Northfield Park.
What's good, everybody? My name is Taylor Vanderbilt, and I'm the host of the 440 College Basketball Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. On the 440, we talk about literally everything college basketball related. It could be women's, it could be men's, it could be recruiting, it could be the tournament. It does not matter. We cover it all. So check it out. Again, it's the 440 College Basketball Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
What's up, everyone? Chase Smith here, host of the Chase Smith Podcast, and my podcast reflects who I am. my hobbies, my interests, my passions, my curiosities, my careers, my questions, and my family. I'll spend time talking about all types of sports, movies, TV shows, trending news stories, and other cultural events, and even faith. This is who I am, and I hope I can get to know you as well. Join me on the Chase Smith Podcast, and let's have some thought-provoking conversations, only on the Press Play Podcast Network.
For the Dennis Maniloff Show, I'll tap into my 40-plus years of following Cleveland sports and 30-plus years of writing and talking about them, so as to bring you informed opinions and analysis of your favorite players and teams. I also will monitor the national sports scene and, when warranted, step out of the toy department and into the real world. And I'll always be on the lookout for special guests. By all means, join us.
Hey everyone, this is Mike Voorhees.
And I'm Brian Shaw. No, not the pitcher. We're the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast, formerly a Swing and a Tribe.
Don't have time to watch 162 games of baseball? We do. We have you covered with recaps of the games, stats, and analysis throughout the MLB season.
Subscribe now to Guardians of the Land and Press Play Pods for all your Cleveland sports analysis.
And welcome back to the R&R podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network, brought to you by MGM Northfield Park. Like a red guy with the day off. So thanks to Sam Amico, who joined us in the opening segment talking Cavs. We're going to talk Browns with you because it is opening week in the National Football League. And the Browns, of course, you wouldn't have it any other way, would you, with the Cleveland Browns? They're 121-1 in openers since 1999, okay? The only team they've beaten since 1999 in the opening game of the season was the Baltimore Ravens in 2004 with Jeff Garcia at quarterback. So if you're a betting man, the odds say pick against the Browns until they can win another game. It's been that long. 17 years since they won a game. Yeah, they tied one. That doesn't count. Ties are like kissing your sister. That's no fun. So bet against them, right? Why else would you bet against them? Well, Deshaun Watson's not the quarterback, and Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback with a backup of Josh Dobbs. Boy. That's another reason to bet against them. Vegas says bet against them. Why? Because when it looked like Deshaun Watson was going to be the quarterback, the Browns were listed as 4-point favorites in this one. When they found out Deshaun Watson was suspended for 11 games, Jacoby Brissett, your starting quarterback, the Browns are 2.5-point dogs on the road against the quarterback who they didn't think was any good, so they traded him to Carolina and did not fear playing him in week 1, Baker Mayfield and the Carolina Panthers. Like I said, OIC, only in Cleveland do you get an opener as juicy as this, right? Think about it. You know, Baker, Mr. Chip on his shoulder, supposedly he said that he was going to F up the Browns in week 1. He told some NFL.com or NFL Network reporter that. Then he denied it. She said, well, I said that. He kind of agreed with what you know, but he was smiling from ear to ear, said something more than likely, and that's just who he is. And that's one of the reasons why the Browns got rid of him, right? They said they wanted a more mature quarterback to be the leader of their franchise. Well, I don't know if they got that in Deshaun Watson based on what happened off the field with him and the fact that he's suspended 11 games. And yes, he's due back for game 12, but he has to meet all the standards set by the NFL in order to be reinstated for game number 12. So that's not a slam dunk. He's got to stay on the straight and narrow. So again, I don't know if they got a more mature quarterback, but they did get a more talented quarterback for when he does play for the Browns. But the guy that's replacing him in week 1, and we'll see if he lasts all 11 games while Watson is on suspension, is Jacoby Brissett. And you've heard me say this on this podcast and on my radio show, the Kenny and JT Show, News Talk 1480, WHBC, and WHBC.com with my partner JT. I'm not a big Jacoby Brissett guy. And so when I look at this team and I see Brissett as the starter and Josh Dobbs, who's never started a game in the NFL before in his life, never thrown, I believe, a touchdown pass in the regular season in the NFL as the backup. He's one snap away, one injury away from going in for Jacoby Brissett. Oh, boy, this is not a good situation. That's why the Browns also added, who was it? Josh Rosen, who was with them in training camp, and Kellen Mond, who was with the Minnesota. They've got 5 quarterbacks basically under contract to start this season. Yeah, I know. Watson shouldn't count there, Roadman, because he's suspended for 11 games. Well, you're still going to be paying him some money this year to be a quarterback for you when he comes back, right? So that makes him under contract, makes Josh Dobbs and Brissett under contract, and 2 practice squad guys. That's how effed up, if you will, the quarterback situation is for the Cleveland Browns. Now, having said that, where they can make up for that and take some of the pressure off of Jacoby Brissett if Kevin Stefanski will adapt to it, and that's Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, Jerome Ford, Demetric Felton. My opinion, the deepest running back room in the entire NFL. And an offensive line, when healthy, Jed Wills at left tackle, Jack Conklin, we'll see if he plays this week at right tackle. At center now, with the injuries and everything, you've got Ethan Posick for Nick Harris, and your 2 guards, you paid them handsomely, right? They're Pro Bowl guards. You got to rely on these guys to provide the holes to run through, and Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio. You use the running game. You go 2 tights with those 5 offensive linemen, play both Kareem Hunt, in my opinion, and Nick Chubb together in the backfield at times. And let's see. So that's what? 2 tights and 5. That's 7. The quarterback's 8. You go the 2 running backs, that would be 10. That means 1 wide receiver. Well, when you look at the roster, you've only got 1 proven wide receiver on the entire damn roster. And that's the guy they traded for in Amari Cooper. I'm not a believer in Donovan Peoples-Jones, Anthony Schwartz, Michael Woods II. I do like David Bell, the rookie 3rd-round pick out of Purdue. I think he's your 2nd best receiver on the team. And, that's not a good thing in a passing league when your 2nd best wide receiver on the team is a 3rd-round pick in this year's draft. So where are you strong? Offensive line, running game. Yes, teams are going to stack the box, but hey, split Kareem Hunt out. Use him as a wide receiver, just like you're going to use Demetric Felton as a wide receiver. Use your tight end, David Njoku, who you paid over $50 million to keep him. And then your other tight end that you feel really good about that you picked up in the draft a couple of years ago, Harrison Bryant. And then they just signed Jesse James, former Steelers tight end. So to me, that's the strength of the offense, the O-line and the running game, which if you can get that going, okay, that then will open up the passing game for whoever is at quarterback. And to start, it's Jacoby Brissett. And Brissett, the one thing he does do, he values the football, right? More than 2-to-1 ratio, touchdowns to interception. Doesn't have a winning record as a starting quarterback, but let's see if he's on a pretty good team with a solid defense. A lot of people think it's going to be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 defense. Hey, manage the game. Don't turn it over. Rely on your rookie field goal kicker who made one from 70 yards in pregame warmups before an exhibition game and hit one from 57 yards in the game, right? Get in field position. You get to the 30, 35, 40-yard line. You're in Cade York range, man. And hey, Jim Tressel ball. Don't be afraid of the punt. Punt the ball away. Live to see another series, and get field position. And the shorter field position, the less yards you got to go to score a touchdown or a field goal. So that's the way I look at the offense. Defensively, Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, the bookend defensive ends are there to put pressure on the quarterback. The question is going to be, can Taven Bryan, can Jordan Elliott, can Tommy Togiai, the rookie Perion Winfrey, and anybody else that's on that defensive line, can they handle the interior portion of this defensive line? We know they got the bookends, and the rookie, Alex Wright, looks decent, right? To get after the quarterback. But what about against the run up the middle? Can any of those guys answer the call and become a defensive presence in the middle of that defensive line? They feel good about their linebackers because what we're hearing is they plan on only playing 2 in most situations. Well, those 2, in my opinion, should be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Anthony Walker Jr., but they may go with Jacob Phillips and JOK because of the speed that they think those 2 bring to the table, along with Sione Takitaki and Tony Fields, who is a youngin'. I'm not enamored with the linebackers, but I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was one of the steals of the draft last year. So I feel good about him having a very good year, and then hopefully either Walker or Phillips can answer the call. But the defensive secondary, to me, that's where the strength of this team is. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome II, Greedy Williams, A.J. Green, M.J. Emerson Jr., John Johnson III, Grant Delpit, Ronnie Harrison Jr., DeAnthony Bell, Richard LeCount III. I like the depth. I like the starters. I like the physicality. I like the secondary. And if those guys up front can put pressure on the quarterback, which means the QB has to get rid of the ball sooner, less time for those guys to have to cover the wide receivers, the slot receivers, the running backs, the tight ends, then this defense may have that top 10, top 5 type year. But it goes down, to me, defensive tackles and linebackers. What do you get in the middle of the field closer to the line of scrimmage from that defense? So that's a look basically at the 53-man roster for Kevin Stefanski in his third year. I'm curious to see how he handles this year. Coach of the year his rookie season. 8-9 last year. Did not handle the Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham Jr. situation well last year. Questionable calls throughout the season with his play calling with an injured quarterback. Run the ball. We get a guy that calls us on the Kenny and JT show on WHBC by the name of Dick in Dayton. Anybody that's listened to me over the years in Cleveland at WKNR or still at WHBC, Dick's been a caller for years. And he's got a voice like this, right? And he's run the ball, Stefanski. He calls us every week during the Brown season. Run the ball, Stefanski. And I agree with Dick. Run the damn football. That's the strength of your offense, and play action off of that. If they can do that and stay above water in the 11 games without Deshaun Watson, and what I mean by that, stay above water means above 500 to me. 6-5 in those first 11 games, then they'll have a shot at the division and the playoffs. If they're 5-6, 4-7, 3-8, yeah, then there's no chance they make the playoffs when Deshaun Watson comes back for the final 6 games, if he is indeed back for all of those. And if they don't make the playoffs and they fail miserably, then don't be surprised if Jimmy Haslam gets tired of Kevin Stefanski already and starts looking in a different direction for a head coach. So the front office, the ownership has put Stefanski in a very tough situation as he had to deal with all that bullshit with Deshaun Watson during the preseason, answering all the questions until they finally found out what the suspension was going to be. Now you know you're without him for 11 games, so how do you play without him? And then how do you incorporate him back when he comes back for game 12 against, and this is an OIC factor once again, only in Cleveland, the Texans in Houston. That's appropriate, right? Open up at Carolina against Baker. If he comes back on time, he plays his first game in Houston against the Texans. So we'll see how this plays out. I have them in I'll give you 2 views on this. Optimistic view, glass half full, with everything now that we know who's in, who's out, how long they're suspended and whatnot. 9-8 best record, okay, based on an 11-game suspension to Deshaun Watson, because I'm not a big believer in Jacoby Brissett. Prove me wrong, and I'll gladly eat my words on the Red Guy and Rhoda podcast powered by MGM Northfield Park, okay? Worst case scenario, it goes really bad. 9-8 becomes, 7-10, 6-11. If they just, fail miserably and don't take advantage of the early schedule where they should be no worse than 3-1 after the first 4 games. So that's how I see it. When Michael gets back from vacation, we'll get his thoughts on it. And in fact, guess what? The next time Michael and I will be together will be post-game Sunday after the Browns-Panthers game, and we'll see if we're talking about Jacoby Brissett becoming the first quarterback to win an opener since Jeff Garcia, or if Baker Mayfield sticks it to his old team and drops the Browns' opening day record since they returned in 1999 to 122-1. All right, thanks to our producer, Jordan Powell. Great job, as always, for producing the R&R podcast. Thanks to Sam Amico for filling in for Michael Regai in our first segment. Most of all, thanks to you for listening and participating by subscribing to us, listening to us tweeting at us, social media, all the stuff. We really appreciate it here on the Red Guy and Rhoda podcast, on the Press Play Podcast Network. And also, we appreciate MGM Northfield Park for being the title sponsor of the R&R podcast. All right, next time we're back with you, it'll be post-game, game one, after the Browns and the Panthers. Michael and I will talk to you then.